right, welcome in to Believe in Packers. I'm your host, Ahman Green, along with my man Joey. And Joey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. It's been great to take in training camp and then family night last night, and excited to get into some actual preseason games here.
Yep, for sure, for sure. And before we do that, just kind of hit back on last week, what's been going on, in my life, which is something that obviously for me is priority number one, but for everybody else, let people know. I say one, thank you. I've had a lot of between yourself, Lindsay behind the scenes, and other friends and teammates, high school, friends and family members throughout the last week. It's been amazing support from the announcement of when I had talked about my Parkinson's disease diagnosis a year ago, and just the help it's just amazing. The support out there is amazing that I could reach back out to people, and now since I'm kind of the dust is settling. Things I remember, one thing I remember particularly that I mentioned a few times to a few people that I talked to on what got me to got me comfortable to talk about that to my good friend Tyler Dunn on his podcast about it like it was just another conversation was because I saw a video back during Super Bowl with Bo Jackson, and he was one of my idols growing up, along with Walter Payton, Marcus Allen, among other NFL greats, running backs. And he had a conversation. I believe it might have been with Dan Patrick on his show, but it was this past Super Bowl in San Francisco, and he brought up the fact that men, especially particularly, he was talking to football guys. So all the his brethren, me included, even though we haven't met, but we know of each other very well. But when we got things going on with our body, health wise, we need to talk about it more. We're more macho and but got the bravado coming out and not want to talk about those things like that as bothering us internally or superficially. And that was just another thing. I say hearing that motivated me. Like, you know what? I want to get to that point. To if I have something, even if it's minor, oh, I got a headache today. My neck's sore. Mentioning that is something that I think men in general, not just football guys, but every person on the planet, every man on the planet, especially if you're a father, you got kids, you got family, you want to notify them first, like which I did through the process. I let my kids know first, and obviously my wife was sitting there the whole time. Has been sitting with me the whole time. But then obviously family, my older brothers, I'm talking to them, talk to my older sister, and to relay that message to them and let them know, look, I'm okay, I'm doing good, I'm ahead of it. That's why it's early onset, so all the early signs got found, and now me and the doctors that diagnosed me can work on a game plan just like anything else. And some of the stuff that the doctors were happy to see that I'm already a guy that's very active, so stay active. In terms of my brain and my body moving. I told them, I work out a few times a week, between mostly body weight stuff, push-ups, and walk in my neighborhood to keep stuff from getting tight and stiff. And things have been, still been, my body's still gonna get tight and stiff. So just keep ahead of that. And obviously eating very clean, eating very well. Don't eat a ton of meat on my end, but just having those conversations, making it the normal of when we hang out, other than we talking football, baseball, basketball, or video games or whatever. We have those casual, fun conversations, which is always the thing. When we hanging out with our friends. But if we got something serious, say, hey man, I got this going on. I have, because between me and guys around my age, my best friend, one of my best friends from high school, he was a running back with me in the same high school backfield. He just got over, I believe, prostate cancer. And he had to tell me that, in the same conversation, he's finding out about my Parkinson's diagnosis. So I was like, hey, man, we got to make this a normal conversation. So from what Bo said to now what I'm saying here on our podcast here is just making a general conversation, to check in. And that's where I come in and say, that's why I said, hi, how you doing to you, Joey, because how you doing does a lot to a person internally. And I remember I have a chiropractor I go to down here to keep things moving, and his secretary, Catherine. Shout out to Catherine and Joseph and Teresa at SCP Chiropractic. I came in one day and asked Catherine, "Hey, how you? She said, "Hey, Amon, how you doing? You can sit right there." I was like, "All right, thank you." I said, "How you doing?" And she was like, "I'm doing good." She kind of paused. She's like, "Nobody ever asked me that." And I was like, "Exactly. You need to find out just somebody. I mean, somebody you don't know. If you just walk by and casually just say, "Hey, man," people say, "How you doing?" every now and then, and say, you meet eye contact and say, "Hey, man, how you doing?" Check in with them. And I think you do that check in sometimes, you might get something special, back at you. And so that from that conversation that Bo had and influenced me to kind of get to that comfortable moment with Tyler. That's where last week happened, and like I said, the support has been amazing. And I got I got homework to do to get ready for potential fundraisers or things like that. And I got some good ideas to collaborate with obviously the teams I played for, the University of Nebraska I went to, and even my high school. I got some ideas I want to do there to get this out in front. And so it's not just prostate cancer, it's any I'm sorry, not prostate cancer, Parkinson's disease, but any chronic illness. It should be talked about. It should be among family, among close friends. You should know what's going on with your teammate or somebody that you hang out with from time to time. So
I think that's all very well said, Ahman, and inspiring to hear you talk about that. I think what you said about Bo Jackson is really cool, and then to have you kind of just being another figure on this kind of recent wave over the past few years of, we view athletes as these kind of gladiators and they're role models because they are invincible through our eyes. But I think for somebody like you to be able to speak so comfortably and confident about this really makes it a lot less scary of a conversation to have. So I appreciate you doing that and be willing to do that.
Yep. And it was another person that also influenced me was my stepfather, Edward Kenneth Scott. He was he had to deal with liver cancer, and I remember the whole time he never sugarcoated anything to myself, to my brothers, my sister, my mom, my wife. We always got in the room and check in on him. He said, "Yeah, the doctor said this today, that today, boom, boom, boom." It was always that general. When you first come into his room at the hospital, I'm going to give you all the good news and the bad news right away. Boom. And then we can have other conversations. So that was another influence of understanding that this got to be a general conversation when you check in with people, especially people that you're close with, that you work with, things like that. You got to check in with one another more often than not.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's been great to see the Packers community and NFL fans at large show up and support you in this. I've had people in real life, bring this up and just wishing the best for you all around, man.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. To get into some Packers training camp here.
Yes, indeed.
Speaking about this Packers community fandom, 57,000 fans at Lambeau Field last night for family night. Always a great tradition. Mon, wanted to ask you at the top just some of your memories of Packers family night, because if the dope sheet from 2005 serves me right, 2000, your first year with the Packers, was their second year of doing family night.
Yeah, I remember the older guys, so like Brett, Leroy, Gilbert, they're like, "What are we doing? I don't want to do this." They were all mad. I don't want to. We got to come in at what time? Because we got to come in later in the day, so everything's pushed back. Because training camp started at you're in the locker room at 6 a.m. sometimes, and then you got your pads on the field at 8 o'clock a.m. in the morning, and then boom, you're off the field by noon, and then you back out there at 3, off at 5. Then you're done. You got meetings, and now everything. Our day started at it started at like 3 o'clock. And like Brett is like, what the hell is going on here? So that was my first year reaction for those guys, because they hadn't done it a whole lot. They'd done the bicycle thing for the kids, riding the bikes to practice field, which was an amazing thing. I have a kid that Isaiah, shout out to him. He's probably like, I think he's close to your age or maybe a little older. And I met him probably my second year actually, because I had one kid. A little blonde kid, and I had him for a while. His bike I think it was just strong enough to hold me on the bike. That was fun. And then I think year 2, Isaiah, I don't know what happened to him, if he moved out the neighborhood out of Green Bay or something. And then another kid popped up, and it was Isaiah. And I had him from like 01 to like '06 or probably '06, my last year before I went to the Texans, then back. And so met his mom and his dad, family. We went to dinner. It became that I think that right there in a nutshell is why when the Packers had or Green Bay had the draft and then we did the bicycle thing. Like that was a big deal because of like we did that because of stuff like that. I like I said I know how he's doing. I think he graduated college and everything. He's doing fantastic. And then I'll say one moment like I mentioned to you before we went live. I remember I was the only running back on family night. I think it was like '05, I think, '04, somewhere in there. It was me, Tony. So the backfield was me, Najee, Tony Fisher, and a few other guys. And then fullbacks was Will Henderson, maybe Matt Snyder still, I can't remember. Nick Lucci was for sure there. A few other fullbacks. And even fullbacks were out. It was like one fullback left. I think it wasn't William either. It was somebody else. Maybe Vontae Leach. He was there. And so we cut family night literally in half and we did no pads. And I was running every play. And I remember the first hour, I looked over at Coach Sherman and I basically gave him a look like, I ain't got no more gas. I mean, I had so many reps before when the hour was up. I was like, how far are we gonna take this? I said, because I'm about to pass out, man. Like, oh my goodness. And so he saw me. He came over to me. I say, I don't have much. I say, Coach, I'm trying to give it all I got. I have nothing left. He said, don't worry about it. We got a few more plays, and I'm gonna let we gonna send this inside. I'm like, whew, thank you. I was like, appreciate you for that one. But yeah, so glad now this family night, everybody's healthy, and it was a good show. Good show from some of the guys out there. Jordan Love, I know, had to sometimes to get the ball and kind of throw the deep ball, and it feels good to kind of let balls like that loose for quarterbacks. I know, been around the guys I've been around in that locker room, to get out there and kind of let that hang out there, kind of get the touch of it, get the placement of it, your footwork and all that, and good throw to I believe it was to Golden who caught the ball later on, in that play. So for me, that play right there just signifies, okay, training camp is moving in the right direction. Guys are getting comfortable with themselves and then obviously with their teammates.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the highlight of the game for me. Matt LaFleur talked about going into family night, just the importance of having this opportunity for the young players to be able to step out onto Lambeau Field. Obviously, it's not going to be a hostile environment on family night, but even just to get the sense of having that stadium crowded, having it be at night. Do you remember, was that an important thing for you, especially earlier on in your career, to get that first step into Lambeau, like that setting?
Yeah, it became that game. It became like in my head it was a game. And I know it was just practice, but for me, I took every practice as this is game day. And so with that, you get used to the crowd. And so with that also means you can drown out the crowd. So you could just focus on when Brett says to play or Aaron says to play or here Jordan says to play, then Marshon or Josh, whoever's in there, tuck on all those offensive line, they could just got the formation. Here's the snap count. Let's get to the line of scrimmage. All right, let's make our checks and read. Then everything becomes normal because for the rookies, having that early touch out there on the grass is good because then they probably come in and been childhood Packer fans and are so. I remember first couple years for me. Actually, first year for me, it was a little bit of fandom going on because I'm like, I remember my sophomore year at Nebraska watching the Brett, Leroy, Reggie White at that time, Dorsey Levens beat the Patriots in our players' lounge room on campus, sitting there. So it was a little bit of fanboy came out of me when I got to that first OTA and then training camp. And then after a while, I was like, hold up, I got to focus up. Even though I'm playing with these dudes that I was just watching on TV a couple years ago. All right, I got to get my play in. What's the snap count, all that. So I think this family night does that for those young players. Get them loose, get them relaxed. And I think the crowd thing then becomes not as a big issue if they didn't come. And if they weren't there for family night for that first preseason game. Sure.
Yeah, that makes sense even just to kind of feel more like this is the real deal. I got to act like it. Yep. Another standout for me throughout training camp and then last night at family night has been Marshon Lloyd. And really, I say he's a standout for me just because it's been so exciting to see him be actually healthy and see and hear of him actually making plays. He did after he scored a touchdown this week at practice, did a backflip, which got everybody scared for a little minute considering his injury history.
Most coaches be like, "What are you doing? Don't do that again."
Yeah, that's LaFleur said. Hey, let's try to cut that out. But great to see him healthy. And last night watching him on the family night stream, just looking really twitchy. And I think his play style is really special and could be a really good compliment to Josh Jacobs. We've talked about that a few times on the show. Wayne Larrivee specifically mentioned on the stream just his pad level once he gets into contact. And I think, that's partly how he's built with how, he's not a very tall guy, but he's very stocky. And so once he gets into kind of that herd of defenders, he can really get his pads low and rush through there. And to me, just watching him last night and kind of knowing of his skill set kind of reminded me of similar to your running style. And so I'm wondering, just watching him and having an understanding of, how can you even learn how to get low like that when you're going into contact, lowering your pad level? And how does that help you gain extra yards after contact?
Yeah, you could definitely learn how to do that, and you learn that in the practice during the practice time. So if you play against good defenders, which between I say college is where I got it down at because I was practicing against the black shirt defense, and they were the number one defense in the country, and so every position you were going to get somebody was going to contact you. If it was a big thump or a little thump from the D lineman coming in, or a big tackle from the linebacker. So the biggest thing is the old thing. I know you probably heard this in football: low man wins, and said it's that simple. And so I mastered being low. And so because I know against the black shirt defense back in college, if I didn't get low, I wasn't going to break the first tackle. And then once the first guy gets there, then everybody else gang tackles and it's over. The play's done. So I learned at Nebraska my freshman year, low man wins, even against the biggest guys. And with my momentum going forward, so you're low and then momentum going forward, accelerate your feet on contact to get through the tackle. So that's where the breaking of the tackle happens, because right before contact hits, so contact hits either with a shoulder pad here, or maybe the chest of the defender. And then the next thing is the arms to come around to wrap you up. But if you're already down low where we both hit shoulders at the same time, he can't really reach. It's almost like putting that arm out there, kind of like a stiff arm. When you do that, then there's no fabric. He can't grab your shoulder pads. He can't grab your jersey or anything like that. And that's where I learned it. So for the rookies coming in, running backs, tight ends, wide receivers, guys that need to break tackles, that's the biggest thing. And I've heard coaches all the time say, accelerate your feet on contact. That helps it, because that's where then a guy like Marshon, looking and in size he is, I saw him do day one when in between family night a couple years ago, but in all the games he's being able to play and get in there behind Josh. That changeup, and Josh does the same thing. He does it in his style, and it makes it very frustrating for a defender to try to make that tackle, because that player is always sitting at a level that's like almost seem like this 2 feet off the ground. It's like, how are you doing that? But it becomes like almost science. Like, if you hit me, you're just going to ricochet me, pop me up a little bit, then I just got to creep back down, before I go into the next defender.
Right. Yeah. So I'm really excited to watch Marshon be able to do that this year, especially, with Josh, obviously, he's a really agile guy. But I think having Marshon in there to kind of add the punch of really being able to wear a defense out, helping them out in those short yardage situations inside the tackles, I think it's going to be a really good addition to the offense this year. Speaking of some of the other young guys, and specifically the rookies, because to me those have been some of the biggest storylines coming out of training camp and then family night as well. First off, you have Brandon Cece, the second-round cornerback. Has had a really good opportunity this past week with Corey Valentine dealing with a hamstring injury. So he's going to miss, or Carrington Valentine, rather. And so he'll miss the next week of practice. So Brandon Cece has been stepping in there watching him last night, looking really good in coverage on Christian Watson. Watson got a few of them, but Cece was still really tight in coverage there. Some of the other rookies, you have Trey Smack, who has been up and down, and I think with how the kicker situation in Green Bay has been post Mason Crosby, I think fans are definitely very sensitive to every alert that comes out of training camp for kickers. But he went 8 for 13 during his first 2 practices at camp. He was 6 for 7 on family night on Friday. Nice. He missed one from 51. They still, have the situation with Matt Orchek missing some time with that injury. So field goal operation is still kind of some moving parts there. And you just got to hope, Trey can continue to figure it out. Then you got some things happening along the offensive line with Jagger Burton. He dealt with a small hamstring injury at the start of camp, but as he was advertised coming out of the draft as somebody who could play day one, looks like he might have that opportunity, specifically at right guard, where Anthony Belton has been struggling a little bit. And so it looks like Jagger might have the opportunity to compete with Jacob Monk for that starting right guard spot. Nice. Ahman, a lot of information there, but just your thoughts on how these rookies are performing, and do you think we, specifically Packers fans, but everybody on the outside, does too much overly analyzing of the ups and downs, the day by day for every player, especially these young guys, and just needs to kind of trust the process a little bit more, and this is how improving in practice works?
Yeah, no, that's what I tell my Packer fans all the time. When I talk Packer football, and especially this time of year, training camp time, I say that. I say these guys, these are kids. They're coming in. There may be 21-year-old there, maybe a 24-year-old there, but they're all in the same bucket in terms of this is their first time being at a training camp, NFL team training camp, and then all the angst comes in from learning your playbook, learning your adjustments and things you need to do to get your job done. Obviously not making mistakes. Those are all the things that runs through a athlete's head. And from OTAs, the good thing is I know today they have an iPad. They have everything they need to see plays, know plays, run them through their brain. And I wish I would have had that, but we didn't. But it is what it is. It's history. So with that being said, the kids have a lot more to get them ready for this just regular practice. And I think for me, should be a confidence builder, because that means the teams around the NFL and obviously Green Bay Packers, I know they are high on tech in terms of, play, from their film rooms. I've seen them. They're amazing, to the playbooks where it's not books, it's an iPad and you flip through them. And then you can even click to, certain little details of, okay, who is the starting 5 linebackers that we're going to face this year, and go through their film and get them ready to watch that. So coming into training camp and getting ready is more of I think just a wishful thought, because they'll have all the time. LaFleur, offensively, I know he does some things where he keeps the guys up front and knows all the formations and all that. And that's the first things you got to do, is get those simple formations for the offensive players down. And then I haven't met Gannon. I haven't seen Gannon, other than when he was coaching at Arizona. It's now seeing what his process is of what he looks for out of his defenders. And I say most defensive coaches and most coaches in general want to see week 1 of everything, or week 2 of everything. I want to see tackling looking good, the form up, the form hit, and all that, making sure it's to the ground, how guys are coming to balance in that scenario. Because first couple weeks, we want to see the basics from all your players. You want to see, even the rookies, you want to see the basic fundamentals of whatever their position asks of them, from running back, quarterback, lineman, and defenders. The biggest thing is just getting in that position to make a tackle and not missing, knowing how to wrap up good and how you're tracking the person you're tackling. So that's the things I say for rookies, from offense to defense. Just have the fundamentals down. The plays will come in later as you're starting to get more reps.
Yeah, it's interesting for me, mostly covering college, and especially going into covering college football, with my main impression being NFL practices, how NFL rosters work, and specifically the Packers, because in the NFL, obviously it's a little bit more of like instant gratification almost compared to college where you really have to see it out with these guys. And so it's easy on the outside in college to see it in a very black and white way,
Hmm.
and label players as, okay, this guy is somebody that can start. This is somebody who probably will, probably doesn't have the talent to start. And then seeing kind of the evolution following those guys, and then all of a sudden a year or two later, they're in the starting lineup, and it's a surprising move, especially when they have the transfer portal and can get guys with
Hmm.
starting experience. It's a surprising move to see those guys in, but then you see why the coaching staff had trust in them, and even if it's a little rocky at the start, they're able to put it together.
Yep.
And so I think looking at the Packers, because I think the Packers could be compared to how you view a college team because of the way they draft, of really just valuing athleticism, and
Hmm.
projection a lot and not as much production. And so with high school or with college, with high school recruiting, that's all that is. You're really just looking at what kind of athlete is this guy,
Right.
what can he turn into for us. And so um, with Packers, kind of the same deal. You have to kind of see that process out,
Hmm.
and give them some guys going to take some more time, than others. And again, that it's just the process of improving. Obviously, with the
Yep.
situation with Trey Smack at kicker, it's a little more concerning because it's almost like, with kicker, it's almost I feel like if you don't have it, you don't have it. But
Right.
there's so much more that goes into it, really. So it's hard to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, and it's a tough. It's just a mental thing. It's more of a mental thing than that because he's,
Right.
I think, obviously the only kicker there, or he's the kicker that
Right.
got drafted. So that becomes a little bit more high anxiety, for him potentially. But if he handles it well and just remember his routine of kicking and going through the motions of what that looks like when he's on the practice field and when he's in a situational thing, once the coaches put him in on those special team periods, stuff like that, and just follow through everything mentally. I think he'll be fine. He just got to put that. He's got to learn. Hopefully, learn that on his own. But with I know with Cisse and like the DB situation, like seeing him, I've seen a couple clips on him, throughout the week. And the biggest thing about DBs, I know they got to have confidence. It's almost a overconfident because you don't get pat on your back a whole lot as a defensive back. You're always basically somebody's always don't get big deep, and when you do, you getting yelled at or the riot act. So he has been playing very confidently and tight, and that's good. And he's not holding a whole lot. You know, I've seen DBs. Trust me, I've seen a lot of DBs, the best ones in the league. I'm like, why are you holding so much? Get your hands off. And I'm the running back, and I'm telling the DB
Right.
like, what are you doing, man? You not learning nothing from that. And to see him not using his hands, using his feet to get his body there, to then be wherever next to that receiver to disrupt the pass, I love seeing that. And so right
Mhm.
now, that's going to be a good, I mean, he got drafted for that reason. And so now we got to, that's one thing I would say that I say that is one player right now that's building the confidence of the coaches behind him.
Absolutely. To wrap it up here, let's talk a little bit about the wide receivers. It's been, when we talked with Bill Huber on our last episode, that was all of our
Hmm.
kind of biggest question, going in training camp, how this would shake out. Unrelated to kind of how that middle of the depth chart will shake out, but Matthew Golden has seemed like the real deal. As we talked
Yeah.
about, he had that great deep touchdown catch last night at family night.
Hmm.
Just really great at getting open. And then you also had a few guys, um, making plays elsewhere. You had Isaiah Nayor, former
Hmm.
Cornhusker like yourself, had a great
Yeah.
catch down the sideline. He wasn't in bounce, but I thought he made a great move on the ball. And then Michael J. Sturdivant, didn't do much at family night, but has been the hottest name out of
Mm.
camp here.
Nice.
Amon, looking at this wide receiver situation, this is going to be something that's going to be viewed, especially throughout the preseason when we actually get to see these guys play. I wanted to ask you because compared to when you were playing, the roster cutdown's much different process because back in the
Hmm.
day they had the mid preseason roster cut down where you went from either 80 to 65 or
Yep.
90 to 75 and then 75 53 at the end of it. Now they,
Right.
since COVID, just have that one hard cut from 90 to 53. Do you think having that hard cut, um, do you think that's maybe beneficial to give? I mean, obviously, I'm sure the teams appreciate it to have some more time to look at these guys.
Right.
But just how do you think that affects these players to have some more time to show off their skills and have more time and kind of just that security to be able to build a rapport with the rest of the team?
Yeah, I think it does. I say one thing it does, and I knew about it. I just didn't let it be the forefront of my thought process because
Mm-hmm.
we knew once at the end of every week during training camp, guys were going to be gone. Regardless of how many guys were going to be gone, that didn't matter. You just knew basically take care of yourself, know all your job assignments on every play, even if you're a special teamer, along with being an offensive player or being a defensive player. There's a lot of players like that on the roster. Basically, everybody that's not a starter is a special teamer
Right.
on the NFL roster. So do your job. Because then those moments of knowing, you hearing the coaches, because the coaches will remind, hey, we're doing our final cuts this week, this Saturday, this Sunday, whatever the day is. They'll say it too. And I got used to Mike Sherman saying that. I got used to Mike McCarthy saying that because it was just a reminder. Like, look, we're the 1%ers. If you want to be in this locker room, this team, then you better make sure you do this, that, and the other. Have your, MAs being low, no mistakes. And then when you're in there, you're showing up on tape. You're showing up on the camera. And then you're just being a good player. You're listening. You're doing every assignment on the field, and then in the locker room, you're hitting the weight room. You're doing everything to keep your body ready to go. So that's what that kind of reminder does to a player. It should do that. It shouldn't stress you out, because if it's stressing you out now, what got you through college and high school? So this is the moment now that you've been fighting for. You dreamt about, hey, I want to be an NFL player. This is part of the NFL package of being a professional athlete. So you got to get ready for it. So I think just having that mindset of just it's coming, so I got to be ready so I don't be on that list. I think you have that type of mindset, and that was my mindset. Is, look, I'm not going to even worry about it, because if I worry about that, I'm gonna be out of here sooner than later. But what I'm gonna work on is thinking positively and making sure I know everything, absolutely everything. I knew stuff the guard needed to do on certain plays, and it wasn't my job to know, but I knew. Just in case something popped up and I got a question asked my way, or my running back coach put it on the running back test before practice, before the game, I could answer it correctly. So I knew a lot of things over the top, but it made me a better player overall.
Right. It's kind of like the job market. You got to make yourself as valuable as possible and in as many
Bingo.
sectors as possible.
Bingo.
Especially for those fringe roster guys. And I think the other thing is with the expansion of the practice squad, not only with the amount of players teams can have on there, but also with the type of players they can have on there, having the restrictions be much less. I think probably is it's not even a safety blanket for guys. It's probably even more of a motivating factor, because it's it probably lessens the worry of if I don't make this final roster cut, it's over. But it does motivate you to, I would think, be able to show off tape to more teams, because they're going to be able, you can be stashed on the practice squad and possibly be picked up. But also for the team that you might be on the practice squad of, make sure if you're cut, you're one of those 16 guys that they want to bring back, show enough potential that they want to keep on having faith in you for years down the line here.
100%, and like for the receivers and everything, Golden, he looks a little I say a little bigger. And Isaiah Nayor's catch, great, amazing catch. But I see Golden, he looks a little bit more confident already, which he should. This is year 2, and so now it's just taking it. And I think you had it over here. Just stack the days to get better out there on the football field for everybody, not just Golden and the receivers, but for every position, for every young player at their position.
Yeah, absolutely. Packers will be back on the practice field Monday, and then traveling to Pittsburgh to take on Mike McCarthy's Pittsburgh Steelers for Week 1 of the preseason. Any final thoughts on training camp before we wrap up here, Ahman?
Yeah. Well, I know this preseason game is going to probably be the weirdest preseason game ever
Yeah.
for any Packer. Like, for me, just watching the game, like, I'm already feeling weird because between McCarthy, you got Aaron still playing when he said he was going to not be playing.
Yep.
Okay, it's already weird. It's like, wait a minute, you were supposed to be retired.
Right.
You used to be our coach, and we got a Super Bowl with you, So it's just fun. But that's football. That's sports. So
Yep.
you're going to see, obviously, a lot of the rookies out there. You won't see Jordan out there a whole lot. You won't see Josh out there a whole lot. You won't see the starters. It's going to be the young guys making a name for themselves, getting on that tape, like I mentioned, show up on film. And that's what you got to see. And just making sure the guys don't make a ton of mistakes. They know their plays, and they go out there at the end of the day, just go out there and play football and have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole Rodgers thing and McCarthy thing will be odd, especially because they played Rodgers at Pittsburgh last year, and that felt like a really great way to say goodbye. It was
Right.
even though you were rooting against him, it was good to see him have a good game, and it was a really entertaining game, and it kind of felt like a passing of a torch in the sense there was a great photo. They got of that game, I believe, of the coin toss where you have Jordan. You can see like the back of Jordan's jersey with Rodgers across from him. Just felt like a very good close to that chapter. So
Right.
obviously it's not like Aaron might play a little bit in this game. It seemed like Mike McCarthy was
Probably
saying.
not. Probably not.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
he's not
exactly.
playing. Trust me, he's not playing.
You can always trust Mike for keep the door open at least. So
Exactly.
always good to see Mike though.
Yep, for sure.
All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Believe in Packers podcast. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'd appreciate it if you left a rating on Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening.